Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws podcast with East Forest. I am Mr. East Forest, and this week I bring you a conversation with Brian Koch. And he's someone I've actually known a long time. I went to high school with him, but he went on to become a founding member of the band Blitzen Trapper, which if you don't know them, they're really great indie rock, Americana, mixing of folk, just a really cool blend of music. They've put out a lot of great albums over the years, and he has a new side project called Deadly. And so we get into all that, dig into our past. It's been a long time since we've talked, and just talk about music and the usual things that sometimes come up, and some unusual things as well. When this comes out, if you're downloading it on the day it's released, I am on a plane. I'm heading to Maui to the Ram Dass retreat right now. Pretty excited. I haven't been back to Maui since I was there last June recording Ram Dass for the record. And, I had hopes about where it would go, but I didn't know. When I was heading out there last time, I actually didn't even know if we were going to get a chance to even meet, if it would actually work, if he was feeling well enough. And as you know, all that happened, and it's coming up almost on a year since I was there recording him. And so it feels very special to be returning. And the album is halfway out, as you know, but it's still in process. And I'm right after the Ram Dass retreat is over, we fly back. And I boogie on down to the studio in southern Utah, and I do the final mix on the remaining songs for chapter 3 and 4. We get all that stuff mastered, and it's onto your ears, onto your hearts. So all of that is coming really soon. So I'm also hoping when I'm out there at the retreat that I'll meet some new folks and maybe get some new voices and conversations for you here on the podcast. So wish me good fortune with that. And also coming up really, really soon is the Music for Mushrooms, a soundtrack for the Psychedelic Practitioner album, which is coming out on May 10th. I finally got all of that into distribution. It was a total beast just to listen and proof and quality control that, let alone make it. But it's 5 hours, as you know. I got it all uploaded. So I found out that if you follow East Forest on Spotify, so if you don't already, go over to my East Forest profile on Spotify, click follow, and then you will be able to hear in your release radar will be one of the tracks. It's almost a 30-minute track. One of the songs will be in your release radar a week in advance. So that's a great way to check out the record and before it comes out and get a taste for everything. I think the track being released is called Always, which is one of my favorites on there. It just is one of those moments, when that music was being created and improvised, where I really hit a certain flow state. And sometimes these melodies come out that are very simple. Like this happens to me sometimes where I come up with a melody and it feels so familiar that I'm worried. I'm like, oh, I'm playing something I've heard. Or there's a simplicity to this that is so universal that it's been done a million times before. And perhaps it has. I'm sure it has in a lot of ways. But that core universality of the melody, it locks in a certain way that actually the other flip side of that feeling is it's actually that part of me saying like, this is really special, or this is something coming through, and just allow it to come through. Don't judge it. Just play it. And that song Always, that's, I think, coming out a week in advance on your release radars. And Spotify, if you're a follower, is one of those tracks. So I'm very, very excited to get that out. And I've also been busy all weekend constructing these ceremony boxes. I don't know if I've told you about this yet, but because Music for Mushrooms is such a large album, it can't really be released on CD or vinyl because it's 5 hours. And so the only merch item, or I should say physical item representing the album, is something called a ceremony box. And what that is think of it as a ceremony kit, like all the primary necessary items I think you would need to step into the ceremony space. So that includes sort of a protocol and instructions about the value of ceremony and how to step into that and how to use these tools. It obviously has the album, the music on a flash drive, so it has it in that way. We can fit it in high resolution wave format. It's actually 24-bit and high resolution MP3 format. So it's the album as individual tracks, like a traditional album, and it's also the album as a single continuous 1 5-hour song. So it just sort of gives you some options there. It also has an essay in there I wrote about, I think it's called Forging a New American Shamanic Path Through Music. And then it has a lot of physical things in there. It has an eye shade. It has 2 raw crystals. It has a dream journal, a custom little pencil we made. It says "Remember." It has a perfume oil, East Forest perfume oil. It has a Palo Santo smudge stick. What else does it have in there? The eye shade. Did I say that? It's got different items in there that you would actually use to dive into the ceremony space. And I hope it becomes not just a way to celebrate and commemorate this release, but also something that's practical and a tool and something that you can actually use and is useful to you. So that's just a great way if you want to support this album beyond just listening about it and telling your friends. That's always a wonderful way. And in addition to this podcast, just telling people about it and sharing it. This is a way you can put some dollars and cents behind it if you want to support the project in a bigger way, and get something special in return that is signed and numbered and limited edition. So that should be coming really soon. I'm going to have it ready by the time the album releases, but we might be able to do a pre-release of that within days. So you could get online and grab. There's only 100 boxes right now, and you could grab one of those boxes. Okie dokie. So other than that, I'll be in Maui, like I said, finishing the record, and then there's some other dates coming up. You can see that at eastforest.org/tour. That includes a conference I'm doing in San Francisco in the middle of May. That's called the Awaken Futures Conference, and that has to do with meditation and technology and psychedelics, and sort of a conversation around all 3 of those. And then I'll be in tour all of June down the West Coast. So from Seattle down to San Diego. So I hope to see you back on the road. I'm feeling a little better. Still got this lingering salmonella food poisoning or whatever it was I picked up in upstate New York. But I'm going to make it. I'm going to persevere. I've got to get this. It's just taking a while for my body to kick it, to lick it. All right, folks, let's get into this conversation. This is Brian Koch. Enjoy.
I'm my only father's son, sinking in the dark, waiting on the
So you're out in Portland. You've been out in Portland. I used to be in Portland. I don't know if you know that, but I moved away about a couple years ago.
How long were you here for?
7 years. So I moved away because I know, we probably lost touch of each other's lives quite a while ago. We did reconnect, I remember, when I was in college, maybe?
In Salem?
I remember. Yeah. Remember that?
Yeah. I was just thinking about that. We jammed in the sanctuary of a church.
Did we?
Yeah. You don't remember that?
I remember smoking pot.
Yeah.
And I think hanging out in like a yellow house, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And then, I was living in my parents' garage, I think. And we set up my drums, and you set up a keyboard over at my the church where my dad went and was like a deacon. And so I had keys, and we just jammed in the chapel, like in an empty, kind of shoddy built church.
Yeah. I don't remember that. But I do have even earlier memories. I remember we were in choir together, and
Yeah.
I remember that you were in a band. I think it was called Autumn.
Yeah, that was my first band.
Yeah, and you put out a cassette. I remember the cassette. It had like black and white leaves on it.
Yeah.
And said Autumn. And I remember being so impressed because at the time, I didn't know like how music was made. I didn't even know like if a band was in a room together, what rehearsal meant, like what they would do,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys just showed up with like a cassette, which at the time was Very impressive.
Well,
I remember I bought one. And I remember listening to it in my car.
To be fair, it was I got grandfathered in on that one because Matt Spousta was. Do you remember Matt?
The names rings
a
bell.
He was in
no.
choir as well, and that's how I got to know him. And I had never been in a band before, but he liked me enough personality wise that he was like, "Hey, do you want to be in a band?" And he didn't know that was like my secret yearning, is to play music with other people. So he didn't know what he was, the monster that he was creating. But I basically just hopped on into the band after they'd already recorded the demo. And I did not know at all how to play the bass. I had just started playing acoustic guitar a little bit, and just was like, "Yeah, I'll be a bass player," which is like how every bass player becomes a bass player.
It's usually how it starts. Exactly.
But
yeah. I didn't play much of anything back then. I mean, I took piano lessons as a kid, but I sucked and I didn't like it. Yeah, I was just sort of the guy who played. I played some sax in the band room across the hall there, and sang in choir and that kind of stuff.
We were probably in the same. No, I quit. That's right. I quit in high school. I played clarinet like for 7 years before that.
But we were both tenors, right? And weren't we in the same section in choir?
Yeah, I started out as a baritone, and then one day, about like a third of the way through the term, Mr. Frame was like,
Mr. Frame,
who wants to try? Gary.
Yeah, he was great.
He was amazing. He was like, who wants to try out for the solo? And I didn't say anything, but after school I went in because I desperately wanted to try, and I tried the solo, and he was like, hold on a tick. And then he like retested my voice and was like, oops, you're a tenor. Sorry about that.
He always needs more tenors. Yeah. Were you in choir? Were we in choir together that year where it was like Mr. Frame's last year, and it was sort of like all those golden boys were in this choir, like Brandon Singleton and Aaron Jensen, and we sang those songs. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I know all those guys. And like, are you the same class? Are we the same class? 93?
No, because I was 2 years later. So I remember that was like a really impressive year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those guys were all in my class, and I was in choir with them. I was only in the concert choir, I think, maybe junior and senior year, or just senior year. But I don't remember that being Gary's last year. Do you remember the song we did that was experimental, where we 2 years later
clapped and stamped at the same time to scare the audience?
Was that the one that had it was like the Lament for a Lost Child with like the
Yes.
Yeah.
I forgot the title. It was very creepy, the song. And
I think it was a Japanese composer. And yeah, that one stuck with me because nobody else was doing experimental stuff like that.
Yeah.
Everything else could be often so kind of hacky and cheesy, but that was like really, it was like the equivalent of like a Sonic Youth for high school choir. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. It's not every day that like the choir has a moment where he would like fake, like to cue us to scare the shit out of the audience, so they couldn't see him like cueing us to like stamp as loud as we could and clap. And everyone would always jump like, Jesus Christ.
Interactive.
Yes.
But I remember that one because it had this really like lamenting, weepy solo that wasn't melodic. It was like you had to say ma and do it in this kind of siren type of wail, like, and it was. I was just like, man, this is cool. This is not the typical fare. So that one kind of stuck with me, and I think we won that year. I think we won the whole.
Yeah, it was like the year,
the whole competition, the whole best of the Northwest.
Yeah. That's right.
And I never won anything ever again.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember those years, and I remember reconnecting with you. One of those times I was back in town, and then after that, it's kind of a blur. And I don't know if I saw you again. I just kind of, heard about you here and there. And it's been a lot of things have happened since then for both of us.
For everybody.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot.
Yeah. And you've been in Blitzen Trapper now for almost 20 years, right?
Oh, yeah, pretty close. I think
amazing.
Technically we're at 19 this year.
Good for you guys.
Yeah, we're ready to graduate high school. But we started in 2000, but we really changed our name to Blitzen Trapper in 2003. So that would have been 16 years ago.
And Eric went to South, is that right? Or no?
Erik Menteer, the lead guitar player, went to Sprague. I went to Sprague. Eric Earley and Michael Van Pelt went to McKay, and nobody from South. Our former player Drew went to North. So we kind of had everybody but McNary and South represented.
Actually, I did see you since then, but you didn't see me. I came to your play that you did at Portland Center Stage, I think it was.
Oh yeah, we talked a little bit about it.
Yeah. Where did you guys come up with the idea to do something as time-consuming and challenging as writing a play and then performing it yourselves?
We got approached by a friend of mine from theater school had gotten a position at Portland Center Stage, stage managing, and he reached out to me one day and said, "Hey, do you guys have any ideas for a play or a musical or anything? We're kind of looking to do something different with some time that we have." And so I thought Eric might be interested in that. And sure enough, he was. And so we took sort of an album's worth of songs that he had already written and then sort of reverse engineered a story, because a lot of the songs were story songs that he'd written. And so, so with a little fudging and a little cutting and pasting and editing, we were able to develop those songs over a year, which really, it was like two really intense long workshops with time in between that we tried to figure out, working with the director and our friend, my friend Liam, who is the the stage manager there, was also co-directing. And so, I think the original script that Eric wrote was pretty amazing to me. I was blown away. I was like, this would be amazing. But then, of course, it was like so grandiose and epic that it was like, you have to lower your expectations a little bit, guys. Like it was like, I think there were like 20 cast members or 25 cast members, and they all were singing and dancing, and it would have been it's still something to shoot for someday, like doing something on that scale. But so we scaled it down to the band doing everything and telling these stories, and the characters that were coming out of the script, and then also added two players and who would also act and sing with us.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because, I mean, I've been thinking myself about sort of like the concert world and adding narrative into it. So essentially, basically becoming a kind of play. And that's sort of, I mean, you guys made a musical essentially but it was, you had the band up there playing the songs as well. And you were doing it in a way that, it's like rock songs essentially. And, but weaving that in with, there was like scenes and acting and stuff. And
I don't know what you would call it, because it wasn't a musical in the way that somebody was like walking into a room and going, "Want to hear a song about it?" Well, it kind of goes like this. Like the songs were all actual songs, and it was more like a rock concert that had moments of interstitial monologues, and the monologues would often be would have some kind of choreography on the stage, not dancing, but like just still moving. Sometimes the settings would change, but really it was very simple and not really a rock opera, not really a musical. It's kind of just almost something else. I guess I would it's like the only thing I can think of is like a rock, like a theatrical rock concert. That's the concert itself is part of this play, and is interrupted with monologues and sometimes a musical accompaniment. But I don't know what you'd call it. They were having a hard time marketing it too.
Yeah. Well, how did you? I mean, it's very ambitious, and I just can't imagine that. Like, I would imagine that it'd be hard just to carve out that kind of time as a group in the year to do something like that. And I just thought it was really cool that you guys dedicated that time to that. how did you feel about it? Like after you got through the process and, from vision into execution and just doing something like that, something so non-traditional as a rock band, like you could have done a lot of things, but that probably took months, of actual time out of your schedules.
Yeah. Yeah. There was like there was a month or like a 3, I can't remember now how long it was. There was an initial workshop, a series of rehearsals over time, like a couple weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Where we were just trying to figure out this thing, talking about it daily, working out songs, seeing what kind of inspiration and discussions it leads to. And then Eric would take that and then retreat back into his creative cave and work on it, and then present us with stuff. But he really did the bulk of the work on the writing. That's all. Mm-hmm. Those are all his songs, and it was a little more interactive live. The way that we arranged it, people had a little more say, but really they're his.
Yeah,
he's the main songwriter, and so they're. So he did the heavy lifting really and all that. It's a pretty impressive feat, and I think all of us felt like this is crazy because we've never had a dedicated costumer or like a set designer or even a lighting designer working, with us like to that degree, and to have everything going on all at once is something that I know I wasn't really like. I'm kind of used to it, having done a lot of plays and a lot of acting.
Yeah.
But the other guys hadn't done much or any, depending on the guy. And so I think for them that was even more novel, and it's been a long time since I think any of us punched a clock where we had to be like
right.
at 9 o'clock. If it's, you have to actually be there at 9 o'clock, it's hard that you can't just be like, whoa, man, traffic was gnarly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a union. It's unionized. And so it was hella professional. And the process was, I was really astounded at just how quickly everybody adapted. And the process was full of so much like mutual admiration and respect between everybody. It felt like that it was just kind of magical. And when it was happening, it was always, every night was kind of like, pinch myself. This is happening. Okay. Mm-hmm. I get to play a crazy, like mad scientist and have a drum set that moves around on stage. And
yeah,
it was pretty amazing. And I thought the musical was cool. I really never got a chance to actually see it as an observer in any way.
Well, yeah,
which I would like to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's hard to be objective when you're so enmeshed.
Yeah. And after that, did you guys just kind of put it aside and move on to the next thing?
Yeah. After that, we were just touring that record, and we had a lot of fans actually come out from various places in the country to see it, and I think most of them all agreed they wanted to see it done in their part of the world, and that would be great. But I don't know how you make that transition.
That's a whole nother thing. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how, I guess I should say, I don't know how we would make that transition, but certainly it was really cool. And it felt like a real achievement, like a real,
hell yeah.
A merit badge,
It's more than a merit badge. Yeah.
I wish I had a sash for all my adult achievements, Kept his house clean for a week, merit badge.
Exactly. So, have you been based in Portland, I presume, this whole time?
Yeah, since 2000.
And are you guys taking a more, a more sort of mature approach to touring and recording these days? Or, I mean, everything's changed since 2000 as far as how people make music and release it. Have you guys sort of stuck to your guns with how you want to do things? Or are you independent now? Or are you still kind of beholden to sort of a traditional schedule?
For the most part, we're things are kind of going as usual. Some things have changed. I think our whole production team has slimmed down a lot. It's pretty much just us and some friends that tour manage and do sound, and then a manager and a booking agent.
Yeah.
And it's pretty slim. And that's fine. We've been at it a long time. Most of us just need to know where to show up on what day, and we're okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's pretty habitual after this long. It's not, there's a lot of comfort in that. I think, at least for me, in knowing that it's just easy because we've done it so many times.
I can see that.
And I enjoy it too, but I don't have to worry about, I guess I just mean there's no extra layers of I don't know. There's something to be said about embracing a challenge, and then something also to be said about knowing that you're comfortable doing something.
Yeah, well, it's also a pretty rarefied place in music to be able to get into that flow. So I say, enjoy it too. To be able to sort of, even just to have one like that from year to year is a really great thing. And I think a lot of people would love to have that.
Yeah, and Eric's he's a real prolific writer, so he tends to always have something up his sleeve as far as creating music and other things he makes. But we're sort of taking a hiatus this year, playing just little festivals here and there and not much more. So the downtime has been kind of nice.
Yeah, you've got a whole nother project that you started. Is it Dead Lee, right?
Yeah. My partner Cara and I, we both write and we both play on each other's songs and keep it simple.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, how's that been?
Thank you.
Starting something from scratch.
Daunting. Yeah.
Are you recording it, or are you having someone else record it for you?
Yeah. I think the whole idea behind it was just to see how much I could do on my own, or on our own, I should say. So, recorded it ourselves and had like CDs made like you do, and hand stamped them, and didn't make the cover artwork though. A friend of mine, Sean, in Salem, did that for us, which I love, the iconic simplicity of it. But I don't know. We're just trying to do it all as much as we can ourselves.
Yeah,
and keep our overhead down and try to be just out there playing music because that's what we like to do. And it's been going well. We're playing a lot around the Pacific Northwest. We've seen little tiny towns that I didn't know existed.
Oh, cool. Really? So you're like doing your show in some of the small Oregon towns?
Yeah.
What's that like?
Yeah.
It's got to be kind of pretty conservative.
I think that whenever you play music, people always whenever I play music, I should say, people always surprise me because I can go into some places and have a total preconceived idea of what they might be like, and then play a show and have the complete opposite idea of the people, because I think people that connect through music tend to show each other their best selves. And, when I'm walking around in a town, I don't necessarily get the same vibe that I do walking around at a show, because people are excited about music. And especially if they know that you're a part of making it, then like they're going to approach you in a totally different way than if you're just a random stranger.
Yeah, true.
But I always end up enjoying myself no matter where we are. And we played a place a little while ago in Concrete, Washington, which I didn't know was a town.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. I just, it's called the Birds.
Do they produce concrete?
Concrete. I don't know a lot of the history. There's a giant industrial storage thing. I don't know if it's a granary or if it has anything to do with the concrete making process, but it's really iconic and just says Concrete Washington on it, I believe. And it's a huge industrial artifact. And I think that it was painted that way for a movie that was in town, a big Hollywood film that was being shot out there a long time ago. Anyway, I think that I've just gleaned some things looking up online, but really it's just a tiny little blip on the map. A lot of elk out there, a lot of farming. Seems like lumber, maybe. But it was really amazing. Like I saw this place, Bird's View Brewing Company, online just through looking around for places to do our thing, and it was so charming. And I just knew I'd have a good time playing there. So reached out to them and we set up a show. And sure enough, it was like one of the greatest times ever.
Oh my God.
Just playing for like 30 people in a little bar on the outside of concrete, not even in concrete, like just kind of in between farms, this brewery, and met a gentleman there who took us on a tour after the show of a guitar woodworking factory that he worked at, where the actual wood was being made from the tree to top and back, from beginning to end, of the actual guitar that we play. The guild that we have, it was like the actual wood came from that place. That's
special.
Yeah, it was cool. It felt really, and I also had just never seen it done. Like, I have this sort of, it's easy to take for granted all the work that goes into making the things that we get so easily, but it was really cool to see it from the giant tree sitting on a platform to the pieces of wood that get molded together and make this beautiful sound.
Yeah, I just saw some documentary about some folks in Cuba, and I didn't even realize how they're not even able to get a lot of instruments.
Yeah.
And a big thing there was making guitar strings and how they have to try to figure out ways to make guitar strings. And I was just like, damn.
What do they make them out of?
Engine parts and stuff. They'll find things in there, or all different things.
Oh.
And they have to get really creative.
Can you go back to, you don't want to go back to catgut.
No. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. But
I don't know.
Maybe that's the finest sound.
It's the purest tone.
It purrs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was terrible. So you're writing songs with your lady, right?
Mm-hmm.
Songwriting.
Yeah, and she'll bring a song often, and then I'll help her with it, and I'll bring a song, and she'll help me with it. And we switch guitars on stage and keep it, because we only have two for right now, one, and so we switch electric and acoustic. It's a pretty Spartan operation.
So what's your own creative process like? And I mean, how has sort of creativity evolved for you in your life as you've gotten older and started to figure out what works for you? Is it something that is regular, or is there any little tricks that you've picked up? You're like, oh, I have to do this, and then I'm kind of happy as a person.
I think I have to always be creating. If I'm not creating in some way, I think I always feel like I'm wasting time. It's I don't know if it's just a habit at this point, but I still feel like the important thing is to create time and space for creative work, and then maybe if you're lucky, the spark of inspiration hits you. But I don't think that I think it's more likely to hit you if you have a habit of creating that time and space.
Definitely. I agree.
Yeah. It's like sometimes
that's the discipline there is sort of most of the work, really. You know?
Yeah. Cause I have to concede that so often, like I'll leave time and space for that to happen, and it just doesn't happen at all, and nothing comes of it. But like, I also know, something probably did in the long run, but maybe it's paving the way for the next time I sit down and really just spend a few hours on it. I just think if you don't spend at least an uninterrupted hour, it's hard to get into that mindset.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's definitely a regularity thing. And there are days where, like you said, not much comes out of it, but I guess I can just be proud that I put in some time, because it feels like little bricks for me. If I'm working on a project, and especially if I'm the only one, so there is no one else to bounce anything off of.
Right.
You just kind of have to keep chipping away at it. And some days are good days, and some days are bad days. It's that old phrase about being not adhering to the fruits of the labor, but the labor itself, because God knows where the fruits come from. It's sort of like things just start to appear, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, I love David Lynch's metaphor of catching the big fish. I don't know if you're familiar with his little pamphlet or book on that.
I've heard that phrase, but if you know more about it, tell me, because I've only kind of heard about it from here and there. That's a great phrase.
I think for him, he would definitely connect the act of creating with his work with transcendental meditation. Because I've heard him speak about this in connection with it. But he also has a book called Catching the Big Fish, and it's sort of like a gentle manual for how to allow yourself the time and space to stick to throw a fish hook out into the ocean of your consciousness and to see if anything bites.
What role does meditation play for you? Or that kind of mindset?
Yeah. I don't have a regular practice. I wish I did. I feel like I'm a little lazy, but it's something that when I get overwhelmed and I adhere to, even on a small scale, like a really small scale, like dipping your toe in the pool, I always feel benefits. So it's something I probably should do more often, but don't do enough. But certainly I try to cultivate some level of just like mindfulness, but it's a daily struggle.
Yeah. Well, for a lot of us, there's so much coming at us, and now more than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm very distractible, and very much a product of my upbringing and being a TV junkie. And so those are all things I have to guard against.
Well, how does it work for you when you are touring with maybe more traditionally with Blitzen Trapper? And I know for myself, and I know a lot of people feel this way, like it's a tug and a pull. It's hard. It's not as romantic all the time. It's sort of that hurry up and wait game. And a lot of times for me, there's a lot of time alone, and, the hotels and the driving and the this and the that. But is it something you found a rhythm with, or a way to, have you made peace with any of that, or is it still bring some struggle?
Yeah, I think it's always hard to be separated from your loved ones, I think, at least for me.
Sure.
So that's the hardest thing for me, is being away from my partner. But we're also touring so little in comparison to how we used to. When we used to tour before, in the earlier days, it was like 6-7 months out of the year. It was just intense.
Wow.
And yeah, and we went like that hard for a long time, for a number of years. And then a lot of the guys have families and kids, so just naturally we've been backing off the intensity and the frequency. So it's really not as it's nothing as intense and destabilizing as I think it was for people's lives. But yeah, and maybe in that way it makes it a little sweeter when it does happen, just because it's a little more rare.
Yeah.
When you're going that hard for a long time, I don't know, at least for myself personally, it could be really hard at times to even remember where I am. Like, I would just get so out of it. I'd wake up and just be like, what, where, what, how, like, where am I? I don't even, I'd be shamefully saying to myself in my own head, like, what state are we in?
That must have been a pretty wild ride, from how fast like things went forward there, and how much you guys probably started playing. And
yeah,
because you got a lot of juice out of the gate.
It's really good for your playing to play every night for months on end. Like you grow a lot. You grow a lot that way. It's sort of an intense laboratory setting. Yeah,
shows are definitely worth a lot of rehearsals. I mean, they're super valuable.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what I've been learning playing with Cara. Just that now, instead of hiding back in the drums, I'm on the front lines, and I had to sort of deal all over again with my stage fright, because I couldn't hide, and the attention was
a whole new thing.
Yeah, it's totally different. And it's been like so long since I've sang my own songs to a crowd forever.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's very vulnerable.
It's just a different thing. Yeah. It's, and also I'm so much older now than I was then. It was easier to acclimate, and I have a lot of experience under my belt now. So it was way easier to, I think when I was young, I had this tragic sort of, don't look at me. Don't look at
But
me.
look a little.
And then, but look at me while I'm peering through my bangs, pretending not to see you looking at me. I don't know. It's just like so tragic.
Yeah.
But I think it was just a lack of self-confidence. But it's been a long time since I've shared my own songs with people, and it's been really great. And I love singing with Cara. So it's a really sweet thing to do.
Well, it sounds like you're planning on just continuing to do that as a project. Because I mean, before we started, you were talking about stuff next year. So
yeah, we're gonna be in Ireland in a week and a half.
Why not?
Touring there for a little bit. It's be our first time playing anywhere abroad, and then our hope is to get back over to Europe to play this time. Fall would be nice.
Yeah, I did a couple DIY tours in Europe. It can be cool, you guys probably played there before as a band, so I mean, you know the drill. But yeah,
I saw your touring schedule recently, and also last time we reconnected, and it's really cool, these places that you get to go and play, like unusual.
I'm all over the place.
Unusual, uncharacteristic, non-traditional venues, and I love that you're making the music that you're making in these places. I think it's a cool thing you stumbled into. Well, I shouldn't say stumbled.
I did stumble into it. I mean, because it's more just like trying to find places to play and connect with people, and it's so freaking diverse. It could be like play Treefort, and it's traditional, and there's indie rock bands around you, or maybe a traditional festival, but it's electronic, and now I'm surrounded by DJs and stuff, or just this last tour, dude, I swear to God, I just did a show in Chicago, and it was inside a mall, and we were inside like a store that's not yet a store. So it was this massive, 20,000 square foot sort of concrete space, but we're in a mall downtown Chicago, and they just set up a system and did an event in there. And it works. I think
just gutted a Meyer and Frank, and you set up inside there.
Yeah, and there were it was sort of a yoga thing. So there were about 400 people, so they had a crowd.
Whoa!
But nonetheless, it's a bit odd. You're loading in through like a Macy's or something, and sometimes I do things in stores in a basement where they have a space, or somebody's house.
Did it look like an old department store that just had everything taken out, or was it like gutted, or what condition was it?
It was new. Oh. So it's just like iron beams and all the piping in the ceiling. It's ready for them to do whatever they want with it. And they gave me a green room that was like the next store over, and it was probably 20,000 square feet with just a table in it. And like a bottle of water on the table. And I was like, this is the strangest, largest, hands down largest green room I've ever had in my life.
Yeah. By myself. A lot of negative space. It's very minimal. I love it.
And then I heard one of them say like, oh, that's East Forest green room. Let him be in there. Like, don't bother him. I'm like, dude, it's okay. Like, I'm a little lonely in there. It's like,
we could get an entire baseball team in here and it'd still be fine.
Dude, you could fit like a Gap in this thing. I mean,
yeah, another mall could fit in there.
Another mall. Yeah.
A smaller mall.
So for me, I'm just playing wherever I can play. And
yeah, but you get like some pretty amazing places, like the Esalen. You played there, right?
Yeah, so I've gotten into the retreat thing too, and so Esalen's like incredible, and
that's amazing. That makes me geek out. Yeah, for sure.
It's a special place.
It's such a. I've never been, and I have this I think I have this sort of imagine this like dream vision of it in my head, where it's like I know the area that it's in, and it's so gorgeous, and I've also spent so many years just listening to a lot of the sort of gadflies that gather about there, speaking like Tim Leary's and Terrence McKenna.
Yeah, are you a Terrence McKenna fan? You ever hear like his talks from there? Probably.
Oh, absolutely. That's
Yeah, me
one of
too.
the first thing that came to mind when
Yeah.
yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, I like to picture him there when I'm there. And they've gone through a little bit of a renaissance because they almost died and closed. Remember when there was mudslides and fires a couple years ago?
Yeah.
So they had a fire coming on one part that almost overtook them. Mudslides in the south that took out the entire road for I think almost a year, and then the same thing happened in the north, and they had to helicopter people out of there, and the entire place shut down because no one could get there, and so
Wow.
they pretty much almost went under because they couldn't make any money.
Yeah.
And the property, I hadn't been there before doing a retreat there. I knew Big Sur was beautiful, but I'd never been inside Estland. It is maybe one of the most beautiful spots I've ever seen in my life. Just
Yeah. What's it like? I don't even really honestly know. I just have this sort of dream cave in my mind that I imagine, but what's it actually like?
well, imagine private land where the entire strip of the land is hugging the cliff of the ocean for almost a mile.
Okay, I was
And
imagining
so
that.
anywhere you are, you're just looking at this expansive Pacific Ocean, and it's at a little area that's sort of like a giant cove. So you're kind of seeing different sides of the landscape, but there are no other properties that you see. So you feel this very sense of isolation. And they have this big lawn in the front there with this garden where they grow a lot of the food, and it's the most picturesque garden you've ever seen in your life. Like no one would have this kind of real estate for a garden. And then down the walkway, they have the bathhouse, which is built into the side of the cliff, maybe 150-foot cliff, where the hot spring comes out of the wall, which is super strange in California. And they have this amazing bathhouse that's just like over the ocean. So you're probably about 50 feet or so, or 100 feet over the water, and you're just hearing the ocean constantly
Man.
into the rocks below you, while everyone's naked in these different tubs 24 hours a day. You can go in there whenever you want.
Wow.
It's just, and the stars, and I mean, it's special.
Do you know who set that up? Like, whose property is it?
It has a long history, but
Yeah.
it's been around doing as a counterculture space probably. I don't know the exact date, but I think it's like 50s or 60s. And as you know,
Yeah.
that's the other side of it. Aside from the beauty, it's like it's just such a center for amazing people and thought and experiments, and
Yeah.
they're getting kind of more into that and trying to think about a new wave of that. And so I think I just caught it at a really good time where they kind of were looking for fresh talent in that sense.
Wow. Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, so we'll be there on the solstice. They just opened up, I think, 10 or 12 more spots on our workshops. You can always come out, but you can go anytime you want.
Yeah, it's going to have to happen at some point.
Oh,
It's in Big Sur?
yeah.
Yeah. That area is so magical.
Yeah, it was apparently a very special spot for native folk who were there because it had the hot spring, and then it has the ocean, and then it also has a waterfall and a river running into the ocean. So it's 3 waterways in one spot. And I don't know any other hot springs in California except like inland, like Wilbur and stuff like that. So it's very unique geologically.
One of my favorite Henry Miller books, he wrote about his time living there, trying to be a hermit. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like a crazy old hermit there way back when.
Yeah. When it was hard to get there. Harder.
Yeah, and probably you could just do whatever you wanted. I mean, they still
Yeah.
kind of do, but they really could back then.
Yeah, he would just get constantly, like, not constantly, but pretty frequently, people just showing up,
Yeah.
tracking him down, finding him, and needing to be in his presence, despite being in one of the most remote locations you could imagine.
Yeah. You can't, and you can't just show up, and they're often sold out. But I heard that, I don't know if this is totally true, but somebody there was telling me last time that some guy, like usually nothing happens there. It's a very peaceful place, but some guy came in his car, went through the gate, continued driving all the way down the lawn, and drove like over the cliff to commit suicide.
Whoa, did he make it?
I think he made it in his attempt to kill himself. He just like barreled through Esalen to go over the cliff.
He went off the cliff.
I think so.
Oh, man.
It's crazy.
Yeah. If it's not true, which I kind of hope it's not, then That would be better. But
Probably better, but I have a memory of someone telling me that last time I was there. But you hear a lot of things.
Maybe you're morphing it in your memory, and he just like did a spectacular dive off the cliff,
or he just showed up and he was depressed and soaked in the hot tub, and
or it was just a conversation that somebody had.
Probably a dream.
Yeah,
yeah. So there's been some highs. You're right. I have to remember the blessings. There's been that. I've done some weird things. I remember I played in Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, which was my first time playing in a straight up cathedral.
Grace
cathedral reverb.
Oh, Grace. Okay.
Grace.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but I kind of miss, like, I like doing the gigs that you're doing where it's like, oh, I get to do something traditional. I mean, last year I toured with an artist, Trevor Hall, and it was a traditional theater tour. And I was just a pig in shit because it was like fantastic. It's like monitor engineers and normal stuff and, good, you know what to expect, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, we're playing right now. We're doing a lot of breweries and wineries. So we bring our own PA with us just so that we can control that element, because especially in the world of wine and beer, they're not used to show environments. They're not used to creating that. So a lot of times they'll have equipment that they don't really know how to use or expect us to know how to use. And it's just, that doesn't work out. So we try to be a little one person carnival.
It's better that way. I mean, the less you can rely on folks that's not their wheelhouse. I mean, I was just at a gig in Jersey, and my writer asked for a sound tech, and this guy's there. It was somebody's like son's friend, and this was a great one. We were inside a gym, okay? So it's like this giant space, like a yoga space, but it's attached to a massive gym in New Jersey. So imagine, like, it's Italian and Jewish, it's just, North New Jersey, New York.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And the guy who was doing the sound literally had just come off the weight floor, and he's this big weightlifting kid. And he's staring at the equipment. And I was like, yeah, man. I was like, it's super simple. I just need 2 XLRs, a plug in. We're good. It's just DI. And he said, what's an XLR? Which one of those? Which is that?
What'd you just call me?
Yeah. And my heart sank. I'm like, oh, I'm so fucked. And he didn't even have it. And so he had to like go to a Guitar Center, and like an hour went by, and I'm just like, oh. And then as soon as things got plugged in, before we even started sound checking, he's like, I got to get back to my workout. So he like left.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah. So, how dare you call me XLR?
Yeah, that's definitely a non-traditional performing environment.
The show went great, actually, but you had to go through some hoops to get there.
That's funny. The lighting in gyms might be next to like Walmart lighting is like my least favorite lighting scheme in the world.
I guess they just think you really need to see everything really well.
Oh man, I don't want to see my body that well.
I've never seen a gym that's like all dark and like a bar.
Like I want a gym that looks like a cool dad's pot smoking hangout with like vinyl and like Jimi Hendrix black velvet posters, and like I want low lighting and like pot smoke in the air. That's
working out high can actually be really amazing.
Yeah, you really
feel your muscles and
really present.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
But
I don't want to.
It's probably going to be a thing. I wouldn't be surprised.
I just don't want to do it in like a super brightly lit aquarium where everyone. The weirdest thing too is that when I had a membership at the gym, almost everybody to a person would watch, like not every single person, but it was really predominant. People were watching the food channels while they would be on the treadmills, and I just thought it was such a kind of
That's ironic.
A really strange and kind of dark image to me. I don't know why. It just made me feel a little weird inside.
It's the hamster wheel.
I know.
Literally.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. And like off in the corner, there's a bunch of meatheads who are screaming every rep they do. And like, it's just it's not the environment that I want to be in. I think it's cool if people want to get in shape, but I just found myself not using it and trying other things, tennis.
Yeah, I did that stuff. Yeah, I took weightlifting at Sprague High School when I was 15 as an early bird at 6:45 in the morning.
Ugh.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why. I was really, felt scrawny and weak, and I worked out with those football guys.
I think I started going to the gym for the first time ever that at that exact age, and excuse me, I was shocked to learn that I could barely press the bench press bar.
It's 45 pounds.
Yeah, by itself. I was like, oh my God, I haven't even put weights on this. And I stayed at it for a couple of years pretty faithfully and lost some weight and it was good for my confidence, but I really hate that environment.
Are you someone who tries to work out on the road to try to stay active?
I try, but I think I mostly fail on the road. I eventually, if we're staying somewhere that doesn't have a fitness center, or if they have if all they have is like a terrible bike in front of a television and that's it, then like I tend
with a fluorescent light.
Yeah, I just tend to like go for a walk or something. It's hard for me to keep it going all the time.
So I enjoy hiking and just being outside. That kind of stuff is always inspiring for me. And I don't know if I told you, but after I moved from Portland, I got a place down in southern Utah, down in way down there, like 4.5 hours south of Salt Lake City.
Like what's the name of the town? Is there a town?
Yeah, it's called Boulder, and it's 200 people, and it's inside the Grand Staircase National Monument.
Oh wow!
And it's sort of central southern way down there. So it's like Moab's to the east and Zion and Bryce to the west.
You have a place there now?
Yeah. Well, it's land.
Oh, wow.
It's 14 acres. It's slick rock. And I just put a fifth wheel trailer on it. And the first thing I built was a sauna. Those were my priorities lied. And a sauna with a sound system and like a cold dunk and a shower. It's like a really nice sauna, but I don't have a home. I just have as trailers go, it's a pretty fancy trailer, but
does it have a kitchen in it?
Oh yeah, running water, flush toilet, kitchen, full kitchen. I've got
You can cook.
Oh yeah, it's got a fridge. So it's
basically a
king size bed.
It's a tiny house basically in size.
It's probably 350 square feet, something like that. 400 tops. Yeah.
And you don't have a family or anything, so that's
fuck it. Yeah.
That's so livable.
Yeah, it's not a real winter fun thing. I did the first winter there, and I was bouncing in and out, which was just not. I think what broke me was one time I had a gig, and I was like, okay, no problem. I'm gonna see if I can just, instead of going up the night before, I'm gonna just get up really early, and I'll drive up to the airport. The flight's at like noon or 11, which means I need to leave at like 6 or something.
It's a 5-hour drive.
4 in normal weather.
Normal
no
weather.
Traffic. This is the winter though.
Yeah.
And every time I left my place, I had to de-winterize the place because it's a trailer. So I had to get the water out of the lines and use like a air compressor, of course, empty the garbage and that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's kind of a bit of work.
Yeah.
And I had it down to about a half hour, 40 minutes. But I got out. It's totally dark. It's 0 degrees. And I go to the compartment to undo the thing with the valves, and it's completely frozen shut. Like I cannot open it.
Uh-huh.
I'm just like, I'm fucked. I can't leave. And I had to get a hammer out, and I'm like blowing the lines out. And then I'm driving. I have to go over a mountain, and it was like super sketchy, roads. I'm like sketchy in the dark.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is dangerous. And so after a whole winter of that, I was like, next winter, this last winter, I don't want to be there. So I've been up in.
Did you make your flight?
I made the flight. Yeah. And I was heading to Laguna Beach of all places, which was like super nice.
That's impressive.
So this last winter I was in Boise with my girlfriend, and it was way more comfortable just chilling and being in a house and going to an airport that's 15 minutes away. Like it's all good.
I like Boise.
Boise's sweet. It's going through a lot of growth. It's sort of like Portland 20 years ago or something.
Yeah. It's really nice though. It's
in a golden spot right now.
Very charming about it. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys, I'm assuming you've played there.
Well, it's funny. There's a club there called Neurolux.
Neurolux. Yeah. I played there. Yeah. Right
next to a really great record store, and for some reason, over all the years we've been touring, we've played more shows at Neurolux than any other club in America because we started playing. Yeah, we started playing at Neurolux, and then every time we've gone back, so we've just stayed there. We've never ventured off to any other venue. Whereas in every other city, we'll we'll move around. Sometimes we'll find a newer, better place, or a bigger or a smaller place. It rarely ever just stays the same. But for like a number of years, the Neurolux was tied with a little hole in the wall in Fargo called the aquarium. Yeah, the aquarium. And the aquarium is like upstairs above an Irish bar. And for whatever reason, we started playing the aquarium. And then even though it changed names, we just always played that place. And so Neurolux and the aquarium were like the two places we played the most in America. And now it's just Neurolux because we've since played it without playing Fargo. So it's the place we've played the most over the years.
You haven't been back in a little bit, because just since I've been around that neck of the woods, I haven't seen your name popping up playing through there.
We were there last year, and actually Kara and I got to open up as Deadly for the band on a little short mini tour we did. It was great.
Double duty.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, so not really. It was a short set we were playing, like 30 minutes. But it was fun. It was really fun. And the Boise crowd was great.
Yeah, they must pack that place out for you guys.
It wasn't actually that great of a turnout, but it was like half full maybe, but it still felt great. And they were actually really nice to us as an opener. I thought I was kind of worried about that one because Neurolux can be a little gnarly, and it's so dingy and dim. Didn't know how they'd deal with our ultra mellow, sad folk, but they were great, and they were.
It's kind of like Boise's Doug Furr. I mean, it fills that slot. I mean, it's actually one of the nicer spots, and it is grimy and bar-like, but it's actually like where a lot of touring acts play.
I like to think of it as maybe R. Kelly's Olympian.
Yeah, it has that vibe too.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't, because the Doug Furr seems so like California, modern, like LA kind of style.
I don't mean aesthetically. I just mean like the level it's at in town.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
Yeah, like the role it plays.
Yeah, I like Doug Furr.
I like that place too a lot. Yeah, it's one of my favorite venues. And where do you guys tend to play in Portland?
We have over the years probably played all over. A lot of the clubs we used to play aren't really open anymore, but we play mostly, I would think, like we'll do like a few nights at the Doug Furr or a night at Rev Hall, which is, do you know Rev Hall?
Yeah, I've seen a few shows there.
It's
a newer
so great.
space. It's beautiful.
Yeah, love it.
Good sound.
Such great sound, and no bad sight lines, and it's just the right size.
Brand new, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. It's been open a few years, but it's such a great remodeling of an old high school. Mm-hmm. That the transformation of that entire building is such it's such a treat. I don't know. There's something really wonderful about it.
No, it's a really nice space. I mean, I've seen a few acts there, and I remember they were trying to fill that slot between places like Doug Furr and then the even bigger spaces. Because I think the cap there is probably like 1,100 or something in that range, or 1,500
in the
Rev Hall, I think.
I think it's around 8, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that.
Well, there aren't many rooms of that size. You know, it either gets really big or, sub 500.
Yeah. Yeah. And Doug Furr is like, I think, 3 or something?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Less than 400.
Yeah, the cap at Rev Hall is 850.
It's also seated if you want it to be, which is cool.
Yeah.
And
you can also have people stand at the front and then everyone else is seated. It's nice.
And it's got like lighting and this huge stage with a lot of height. It's really cool.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about it.
And it's in a good location.
It's sort of my dream for Dead Lee to play there and to play the Arlene Schnitzer someday. That's like the one place I've never played in town.
Me too. I saw Andrew Bird there a couple years ago, and I was like, oh, I want to play here. This is a beautiful. It's 3,000 plus seats.
Yeah. I saw Wilco there, and it was just like the greatest show ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen some amazing theater shows with artists that I love, and that's sort of a place I'd love to be, is just playing those theaters, because you can really dial things in. You can get really specific and small in such a big space.
Yeah,
and you can do things with lighting, and the sound can be just really consistent.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful place. Like you can do really spot on full classical symphony orchestras, and then also have like Gillian Welch and Dave Rollins play there, and just have, it's just, I don't know. There's nothing, it's so professional and so well dialed in that anything that goes on there for the most part is going to sound incredible. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful old theater.
Yeah. I mean, it's not cheap. It's a big old union house, I'm sure, but you do get a good show.
I saw Mythbusters there. I was working the show, but I watched a lot of it. It was kind of strange.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, does he come through there? Or
I would imagine, yeah, probably.
Bill Maher.
Yeah, they get
people
comics.
Play the Civic. Yeah, yeah. I like theater shows. I saw Sigur Rós for the first time at the Beacon Theater in New York, and that show changed my life. That was back in like 2006 or something.
But that was cool.
And just magic, being able to sit down and be up in a balcony like that.
I was just thinking like, I won't even mention the Moda Center because it's the biggest place here in town. And that's for like Justin Bieber and the New Kids on the Block reunion tour or something. But I forgot. I just remembered that I have played there, that for some kind of radio, I think it was 94.7, I want to say, it was having a showcase there.
Oh, right.
And Marty and Eric and I got to go perform just as a vocal trio with one guitar to an arena full of people, and that was insane. Just like the vocals were so loud and echoing through the room. I'll never forget that. Oh, actually, it's funny. I had forgotten it, and I just remembered it.
You had forgotten it.
I'll never forget that.
I will never forget that.
I'll never forget it until I forget it now.
Well, it's crazy to think about how much we forget, like most things we forget and in our lives.
Yeah.
And so this conversation, more than likely at one point in our lives, we will have no memory of it.
Well, you were saying you don't remember jamming in
I don't remember jamming.
In that church.
I have a weird dream memory of being, once you said it, I'm like, maybe, but no, I don't.
What's funny is I think we were trying to do some kind of like, indie rock version of "O Come Emmanuel" or something.
Did we smoke before? Because that would help.
Of course,
me not
I'm pretty sure we did. Yeah.
So I don't know. Man. I remember getting high and probably just thinking about the fact that I had to go home to my parents' house at some point, and this was like a new venture for me.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, "Wow, this sounds terrible," because the reverb in there was just such an ugly building and like so hastily constructed, and it just kind of sounded that way. It just sounded like we were playing in a room with noxious chemically scented carpet and bad like thin drywall. It just did not sound good, and the drums were echoing in kind of a bad way. I was like, man, this place sounds bad. And
you had like a keyboard or something that I was playing?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you might have brought one, but I
did. I certainly didn't have one. There's no way.
You didn't have one?
No, because I was just visiting. I was coming home.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sure I must have brought one. I certainly had one. It's funny though, because I'm trying to think of why we did that and not. Maybe I already had it set up. Maybe I was like
Probably.
Recording there, thinking that I wanted to try to use the natural reverb of the church. Maybe I was already set up for that. Because, I don't know why we wouldn't have just played in my, like, opium den at home. I had, like a carpeted garage full of musical equipment. I'm not sure why we didn't just do it there.
For the vibe, man.
Yeah.
For the vibe.
The haunting vibe.
Sorry, I don't remember that. But
no, it's okay.
I remember other strange things, like the color of the house, so...
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Proof.
Yes. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, brother, but I said I'd be amiss if I didn't ask you a couple music questions. I'm sure there's people out there who, for folks that have, like yourself, who've kind of walked a walk that maybe for people feels mysterious or this or that. The music industry has changed a lot and is changing rapidly now, of course. Do you have any personal sense from sort of that inside view of where you kind of see it going in the near term or the long term, or how people who want to slot into it these days but are trying to figure out how to start? You think it's any different than it was in the past, or is it sort of
That's a tough question. I
Well,
think,
it's tough because I'm asking you to predict the future, but you could
well,
also just speak from your own experience, I suppose.
yeah, as far as like the future goes, I really have no idea. I think there's a cynical part of me that just wants to say whatever it is now, it'll be worse. Because I think the way things are, unless things radically change, it's not a very good situation for the artists out there. And maybe it never has been a great situation, but the advent of the internet hasn't been good for people, for artists' pocketbooks. I think it's been great for a lot of people's pocketbooks, but not for the artists as much. And that's kind of sad because that feels like going backwards. More.
That's interesting because my experience is a little different in that things actually never started taking off until I started distributing music through the internet and being able to get streaming revenue, where if I owned all my music, it was the first time there was actual like passive real income coming in from that. And it shocked me.
That's great. I mean, that's great.
I noticed that as like, well, if I had a label deal, which I wanted, but then I realized, the best deal I was going to get was a 50-50. And then the worst deal I was going to get was like, I'd have 12% if I had some, major deal.
Right. I think that that's probably the best thing about the internet is the way that it sort of flattens the playing ground for everyone to. Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that I was going to say about it was that regardless of how the landscape changes, I think what's ultimately important is that you create. I think if you have to be doing it, you will be. I don't really have much of a grip on it, honestly, right now. Like as far as the industry of it goes, it's confusing to me, and but I find a way to somehow be out there performing.
Do you think if Blitzen Trapper if it was 2003 now, you guys would have a similar trajectory? Nothing more, just like, would that slot in the same way in where the landscape is now?
What do you mean? Oh, like if we were just starting out now?
If you were starting out now and you were breaking right now, do you think the path would have been similar, like today? Like, or I guess you still could hit the road for 6-7 months. That's still pretty standard, and you'd basically be touring. And
yeah, that would be the same, because I think there's always, hopefully that we don't find a way to replace the actual artists and musicians performing live. Maybe holograms will be useful at some point in replacing us. But I think, there's always going to be that, I hope. But so that hasn't changed. But yeah, the landscape for, like, at some point, all you had to do is make an album and people would either buy it or they wouldn't. And there was a lot less competition. And the only way to really get the music was to buy the vinyl.
Yeah,
you had to buy the vinyl to get it. That was it. And then at some point you could buy the CD. But now that you can pretty much just slurp or stream anything you want.
Did you say slurp?
That's yeah. Anything you want that's
Slurper
ever
music.
Existed. Anything slurpable you can slurp.
That's amazing.
And
well, also we have the social media now. I mean, it's a whole different landscape of what it means to be an artist and the expectation of access. And you have to be on these platforms, essentially. I mean, I guess you could try not to be, but it's difficult if you're trying to come up on a low level.
Yeah.
A lot of places, they just say like, okay, send us your profiles.
Yeah.
And they look at the quantification of your numbers on that as their base point of how to work with you.
Yeah, it's a sad reality. I think it's a sad reality. It's weird because I feel like it's forcing us all to become brand developers for our persona, for ourselves, just to find a way to, even if you're not selling something, I feel like everybody's just always doing PR campaigns for their lives. It's a strange thing.
Who knew we'd all be our own PR agents and be in a country that's sort of in a quiet civil war?
Yeah, I definitely am an old man when it comes to that kind of stuff, because I couldn't really imagine, just growing up on Instagram. Like,
Oh God.
you know, or whatever. Insert new technology, I guess. I'm having an old man rant, and I can't program my VCR.
But here we are talking on tech, and there's, it's great.
Yeah, this is actually this is cool. This
Pretty slick,
this
right?
medium through which we're it's pretty
Yeah.
great.
And when I do it with musicians like yourself, and you plug in a decent mic, I mean, it's like we're sitting next to each other. It's simple.
Yeah, you're right in the room. It's sensuous.
And, you use Skype and all this stuff. And what kind of mic are you using, Brian?
This is a MXL 4000. I'm going through a low-level consumer preamp Focusrite, Scarlett Focusrite, into a computer. What are you using?
Did you just call me an MXL? No.
Yo, bro, I gotta go. We should wrap this up because I gotta go do a few sets.
I'm actually using my mic I used to sing on, which is a Shure, one of those SM8s. Those
This is the fat one that kind of has a nipple on it.
Well, it's a dynamic mic for the stage, but it's a mic they came out with a couple years ago that I just saw a lot of my friends using and other people using on stage.
What's it called again?
I thought I'd check it out. SM8. They look dope too. It's like old school metal looking, like gunmetal. But it has a great sound, and I've really warmed up to it. I have a problem with hats, coats, microphones, and speakers. I don't get a lot of speakers, but microphones is a real downfall for me. I can always justify trying out a new vocal mic, especially for a live setup, because I'm like, well, maybe it'll be better, or I'll change it this way, or now I'm singing like this, and I want to try that. And so I've a lot of them. And this is just...
Does it basically look exactly like an SM58?
No, it's got like... I don't know how to...
Because I'm trying to look it up, and
SM8.
I don't know. It's not coming
They're
up.
like $500. They're not super cheap, but they have a good sound. I think it's SM8. Sure. Should just give me... I don't have any...
Does it have does it hang, or how is it suspended?
No. You just hold it.
Yeah,
I think it's not an SM8. What am I talking about?
I cannot program my VCR.
I'm screwing it up. It's a KSM8. Sorry, the SM8 is it's the KSM8. Yeah, which is you might dig it.
Oh yeah,
you sing a lot in falsetto and stuff, right? Like I do.
I've been known to, yes.
You've been known to. So we're both little crooners, and this works nicely for that. It's very, very warm. Not a lot of proximity effect.
Yeah, it's got a nice chrome look.
It's kind of retro looking, and it's super pro. It does not need a lot of EQ, which is nice when you're bouncing around,
Yeah, you sound amazing right now.
Yeah, so I'll EQ it for the podcast a little bit. I usually take some low off, but right now for you're hearing it raw, baby, in your ears.
Wow, that's raw, dog.
Yeah, but that's definitely a problem. I like microphones, and I was never a techie guy, but I've turned into a techie guy because I kind of had to be. And the music I made, I actually started making it by myself because I was coming out of a band, and it sort of imploded and went bad in New York City at the time. And I was like, I don't want to play with other people because I can't rely on them, and I'll just do a solo project. And so that's why I started looping, and that's why I started using like beats and stuff, not because I was the electronic guy, but because I didn't have a drummer.
Yeah.
And I was just like, how do I put a show on? I need to like play these songs. And so it just started that way, and it's mostly still is that way.
Have you had any shows that broke down because you were having technology issues?
Dude, oh my God. Like my heart, this is like a subject I'm scared to talk about. It's like, when someone talks about cancer and they're like, don't say the word.
You're superstitious about it?
Well, I want to say I used to be, and it's something I'm actually working with really hard right now, is like breaking down a lot of superstitions and obsessions, these little tiny ones that I don't even always notice are there in my mind. And only recently have I been trying to break through them. But it's actually challenging because I do believe there's a component with like your unconscious and kind of what you tell yourself. And so sometimes those rituals are a way of just telling your unconscious everything's safe, you're okay. But if you don't really believe that, then you have this story going that like there are problems and you're making problems perhaps. And I don't have a tech person on the road with me. And sometimes there's no one, and sometimes there is someone doing sound and so forth. But I'm really assiduous with like having production computers that are only for that don't go online. I only use them for that, and having two of them and having two of a lot of things. And not that would be practical in the moment, but at least you have it with you. It's like peace of mind, having duplicates of things.
Oh, so one's a backup.
Yeah, like I have two computers, I have two interfaces, kind of two of almost everything. I don't have two keyboards. I mostly use a Nord keyboard, but I fly the day before.
So you've never had a show breakdown?
Oh, I've had issues. Yeah. I mean, I've had things like things where I was in Chicago in this big show. I was opening for Trevor Hall, and probably 1,000 people, and it was a second night on the tour, and all of a sudden I'm hearing like these like weird clicky sounds, some kind of computer thing getting worse and worse, to the point where I was like, I can either like stop and sort of restart and that kind of stuff, or just end. And I just ended the set. It's like I was close to the end, but I was like, all right. And that one freaked me out because there's some voodoo to the computer. I don't, and I got on the phone with my buddy and we talked it through, and we kind of guessed at what we thought it was. And I think we got it pretty well dialed to what we thought it was. But I've had things like I was playing another show and I was at this climax of this song, and all of a sudden all the power went out in everything, but not in the venue, just all my equipment. So that's like a big party foul, because the music just stops on a dime, right?
Yeah.
And I look around and I look behind me, and on the back of the wall was, I shit you not, a 90-some-year-old woman, like poking her head out of the drapes, waving her hands, sorry, because she had kicked the power cord out of the wall. And I guess I had everything in one like power line coming from the back of the stage. And all I'm thinking is like, who is this? Like, what is it? I don't understand. Like, why is there an old woman here at this dingy club? What's she doing on stage? And she just kicked the power out of the wall. Like,
sorry, I got to charge my phone.
She was someone's grandmother for the next set, and they were trying to get her position, and she was trying to cross the stage, and she kicked the power out.
Yeah. Wow.
But I handled that one pretty gracefully, and we just plugged things back in, and then we restarted everything. And
you didn't throw Granny under the bus?
I did not, because what are you going to... I mean, when something like that happens, man, that's just like grace of God. It's sort of like, that's like force majeure.
You were just glad that there was a solution.
There was a solution, and you move forward. Yeah. And I've had things where like I start playing and the sound's all distorted, and as I'm playing, you just have to troubleshoot. And I remember figuring out it was like one Y cable splitter. And I was like, as I was playing, I like pulled it out, got rid of it, put the things directly in, turned up the volume, and kept going. But I just was like, it's the grace of God that you're able to figure that kind of stuff out.
Yeah, it's you really find out what you're made of when you're in front of a lot of people and stuff starts to go wrong.
Well, has that happened to you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I it makes me think also of like when I was just starting out in Salem, somebody was like, we're going to give you guys a show at our house party up in Portland. And myself and Eric and another friend of ours, Josh, had like kind of a half original and half improvisational 3-person band. And I was drumming, and we got up to the house party before I realized I didn't bring a snare or a snare stand. So I ended up using my floor tom as this in place of where the snare would go for the show. And like nobody cared. Nobody seemed to notice. Nothing. It was like, it was just party.
It's like so hip.
Yeah, they thought it was like some artistic choice. And the same thing happened for a show we played in like early aughts up in Yakima for Halloween. And that one was crazy because it was at a friend's barn, and they packed the upstairs of the barn with hay for everyone to sit on, put lots of lights. It was really beautiful. and then a drunk dude with a forklift like put us up on top and moved our gear up to the top, and then we set up, and I realized I didn't bring my hi-hats, so I used my two big ride and crash cymbals as hi-hats, and it sounded amazing, and but like everybody was dressed in like crazy costumes, and everybody was on psychedelics, and it was like a Hunter S. Thompson sort of gathering. Like it was really psychedelic and a long performance, and I just remember having these gigantic hi-hats and loving it.
Yeah, I'm sure we could go forever with stories of crazy ass experiences in weird places.
That sounds like so lame. I'm like, oh man, it was so crazy. I had big hi-hats. But wait, there's more. I had a beer.
Yeah, I get really touchy about like people touching my gear too. Like, oh, actually, dude, you'll love this. I was in Portland this last summer playing for a dance company. They do this aerial dancing, the AWOL dance company. Oh, by the way, I'll be there June 1st if you're in town, playing a show at Old Church.
Oh, sweet.
If you want to come.
I love that place.
Yeah. Anyway, I was doing this show, and they wanted to do a promo thing at Kebu. So I'm like, okay. So show up at Kebu this time, and you're going to perform live, and then we're going to talk. It's like, okay. So that was my day, right? So I get up, I get there at 11, you park, I went in, I set up all my gear. I have my in-ears. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I've got everything going here. I even rehearsed a little bit because I was like, what do I do there, know? And the sound they were getting was just horrifically distorted. Like some kind of gain structure problem. I don't know. It was in mono, like all these problems. And I'm like trying to be polite and like, well, I'll let them work on this. And the kid running the show couldn't figure it out. And so I was trying to troubleshoot, and she kept blaming me and my gear, and I'm like, look, I can hear it. I know what's happening. It's not my gear. And she bends over and starts just yanking on my cables, like pulling them out of the interface. And that's where I'm just like, just stop. It's just the word stop, like safe word, like stop pulling things out. Stop. Everybody stop. This isn't worth any of this. Like, and I said something like, look, I have really high end in-ears. I can hear it. I know it's good. And something about that triggered her. She flipped out and she's like, you know what? That kind of aggressive speech is not part of this community, and you need to pack up your stuff and you need to get out. And I was like, yeah, I went from 0 to 100. And anyway, long story short, I got kicked out of Kebu. Literally, I got kicked out, didn't play a note, and I was there trying to just promote this dance company for free and play on their show. And I had to pack up all my stuff and leave.
So it was because you mentioned that your in-ears were expensive that was so triggering?
I suppose the energy of my voice was too aggressive and straight and white and then she said something like, as she was getting very worked up, she's like, I took an anxiety pill today and I cannot handle this kind of situation right now. And I'm just like, whoa. Okay,
sometimes technological issues, and like we were saying, like when stuff starts to break down, you find out what you're made of. Yeah,
and I was like willing to help, but it went south. So that was my only time trying to do an in studio at Kebu.
Well, I was also going to tell you earlier on in this conversation that I don't appreciate your tone.
Is it because we used the word XLR before?
I feel like you're surrounding me because I'm wearing headphones, and you're just like inside me.
Well, maybe we should just end this, Brian. I'll wait another 20 years to talk to you.
No, please don't.
But seriously, man, it has been really good to catch up. And like I said, when I reached out, it's like doing these things is always the best part of it. Is it's just a great excuse to connect. And it's even with like friends of mine that I know fairly well. It's like, it's rare that I'll put aside an hour and just dig into their lives a bit. And I always find myself feeling like nourished by that. And so it's been awesome. And now I'm excited to see it sometime when I pass through.
Yeah, please do. I want to talk more about like Esalen and Terrence McKenna and things on those level. with you.
Yeah, we can do it on the podcast another time, and we can absolutely do it in person. And I've mentioned this a lot on the podcast, but on May 10th, I'm releasing a 5-hour record called Music for Mushrooms, a soundtrack for the psychedelic practitioner.
Oh.
And it's just what it says it is. It's the soundtrack to Journey on Psilocybin with, and it's kicking my ass. It's so epic, but it's...
Why are you telling me this now? I want to talk about it.
Well, maybe we'll do this again in May or June when the record's out, and it's a way of promoting the record. But it's a deep subject for me, and it's something I've been really into for a long time. But if you like, actually, I could send you an advance of the record. Check it out, listen to it in your daily life.
You should also just give me a call, and we can just talk about what I want to hear about this project from you. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's something I've kind of been working on for 10 years, and it's where a lot of my music came from. So it made sense to finally, it felt like the cultural winds were moving in a certain direction in the last year or two, where I was like, all right, I'm just going to do this all the way. And finally put a lot of my music was that way, but in bits and pieces. And now I was like, I'm going to put just sort of like the definitive full thing. And it's been, calling a mastering engineer friend and being like, listen, bro, can you master a record that's 5 hours? And he's just like, I was like, I need a custom quote because this is beyond normal type stuff. Songs are 30 minutes.
Well, it's more like mastering like a book audio, right? I mean, in scope.
But it isn't, because it's music. I mean, it's straight up for him. It's a 13 track. Taylor Dupree mastered it, and he's cool because he really likes experimental stuff. And so actually, I could tell he was like actually quite excited by the idea of it. But nonetheless, it's like when he sends me a master, just to listen to it once, I usually can't do it in one sitting. It's so long, and you have to pay attention. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's a beast. It's a beast doing something that long, but it's also super fun. I didn't even know like if you could distribute records that long. Like I had to look into that kind of stuff.
That's like two of the Lord of the Rings theatrical releases back to back. It's long.
Yeah. It's maybe just the soundtrack, but it's. Yeah, I think you'll like it, man. I'll send you a download code, because then you can download it in any format you want, including high def, if that's your thing.
That's cool. I have so many questions, but yeah, that's awesome.
Well, ask me one, and then we'll wrap it up.
Gosh, what kind of research did you do towards creating an audio project for people under the influence of psilocybin?
Well, it was over all those 10 years. So, I mean, but it was half of the research was, or a lot of the research was just anecdotal and trying things over the years and guiding circles with music and literally just seeing this works, this doesn't work as well. In this moment in the experience, it needs to be more of this kind of thing. And then that's how I was creating the musical style that I was doing, like the slow moving, looped stuff, because I needed to play by myself for a long time. And in that space, I found that kind of gentleness and slow growth and progression was really helpful and soothing for people. And the nature sounds and the field recordings I was gathering and the vocalizations of the words that wasn't lyrics, so it didn't like activate that part of their brain. And just things like that. And on the research side, it was looking at modern sound healing stuff, which you can just sort of read about or have friends who are in those fields and just learn about what we know works for entraining the brain and where the real juice is, like overtones and stuff. And then the other side was more historical and anthropological and looking at what indigenous ceremonies have been doing for millennia. Mm-hmm. Because they all use sound, they all use song as their main vehicle of ceremony. So I would go experience like a Lakota sweat lodge or an ayahuasca ceremony, Peruvian style, or San Pedro, or shamanic drumming things, or just kind of get into it and see what other shamans are doing. And a lot of them is particularly like a sweat lodge, for instance, Lakota style. It is exactly the same way it's been done forever. I mean, they're very strict about it. So you're experiencing a kind of technology they've developed for good reason. They've done their own research for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I just try to pick up clues from that kind of stuff. And then just, you mesh it all together in your head creatively, and it comes out through your own style.
Did you find yourself sort of trying to create emotional and moods and landscapes in a general way, or do you feel like were you actually going to like, I'm setting out to create this sort of brain wave pattern? Or
was not intentional, like this brainwave pattern. It was very more creative. So when I would actually do it, I'd improvise, and because that's, to me, felt important. It felt important that you're creating music in that space from what's happening in the room, and taking some of the medicine too. Not a lot, but enough that I can feel it in me and sort of bring that spirit into the space. And it's incredibly hard and scary and challenging, but that's where I felt all the magic would come from, was being open to something wanting to happen. So the record is actually 2 nights from a ceremony, and it's all improvised. So none of those songs have been played before, and I have never played them since. And at times I will listen back to it and think like, where the hell did that come from? And there's some things I'm like, oh, I see that trick I'm doing. I do that a lot, but it's okay. It works. It works to get them in that space. But there are times where it just feels like you're in that flow state. And, I've been doing this particular process with these tools, these loopers and these sounds in the Nord and my voice and the field recordings. And it's like, there's a fluidity with what can be done. There aren't that many constituent parts, really. Pianos, Rhodes, organs, a few Mellotron sounds, the voice, field recordings, shakers. That's it.
Yeah.
And so, there are a lot of different ways you can combine that. I have 4 loops. You can reverse things, you can octave things, and that's it. And you can't save anything. And so it creates this sort of like, when you have fewer colors to paint with, you actually can create some more interesting stuff. It's not like I have... And all the field recordings I make myself. It's not like, oh, I'll just search the internet for crickets. It's like, no, that's too much. Like, how about the ones that you gather yourself? And then those are the only ones you can use.
Yeah, that's nice.
Things like that.
That's nice.
Yeah. So it's a very personal process in that sense.
Are you familiar with Reggie Watts?
Yeah.
He's really inspiring with his looping technology and his
he's amazing.
His musical talent in general, but yeah.
I mean, beyond, and then his like comedic talent. Yeah. He's a genius.
Yeah. He's
I love him. He used to be my friend's neighbor in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. It was so random.
Yeah.
They're like buddies.
Very inspiring person.
Yeah. Yeah. And looping, as you know, kind of became almost gimmicky for a bit there. And I don't ever want it to be like, look at me, I'm, doing this thing and I'm going to add this thing on. It's more like, I'm almost more satisfied if you don't really realize that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest challenge I face when I play live is that, if you look at me on stage and you see someone standing at the keyboard, but you might not know it's a keyboard. And I'm also turning knobs because I have controllers up there and my feet are doing stuff they don't even notice. They think I'm DJing. And it's all live, but it happens a lot where they're just like, that was a great DJ set. And I just I think a lot about like the theatricality of performing music and how that's a really helpful aspect. When you see someone playing violin, you get it. I get it. It's like they are playing that instrument. And when you're a piano player, unless you're at a big piano and you kind of turn it to the side, it's more mysterious for people. Most people don't know how music is even made. They're just kind of hearing it. And there is so much DJ and stuff happening that they're used to hearing just fully produced tracks all the time.
Yeah, a lot of modern music to me just sounds like robots fighting or having sex. Like it doesn't really sound like it's not a lot of musicality in a lot of modern music. That's not to say all of it, but I don't know.
It feels a bit, I know I sound old, but it does feel like an onslaught. Like anytime I get in an Uber or a Lyft and they always have the radio blasting, which happens a lot when you're touring around, it's just like, it's so fucking bad. It's just like, what is this music? It's just like, it's all the same. Like, and they're just hammering away and there's all these effects and
auto-tune everything.
I can't stand
auto-tune everything.
I can't stand the auto-tune thing. It's
like it's like any
why?
effect. I think, you know,
Why?
you use it once tastefully, that's cool. But when it's like on everything, and I definitely think there's an element of it where it's like you're using this in a cool, creative way occasionally, but oftentimes it's being used just because people who are singing are more beautiful than they are talented at singing.
Well, it's big in the hip hop world to the point where it's like you're supposed to do it now, and it's just sort of strange to me because it's moving. We're going to have AI making music in soon, so it's like I think the people who will be the most successful are the ones who lean into the human element of it.
It's funny, yeah, because I was just talking about this with my friends, and I was like, to me, this music sounds like it's transhumanist, like it's like
Well, it is literally right. Like we're using these computer tools to make it into cyborgy, like you said.
yeah, but I guess maybe when we get to the point where the programs are somehow creating them themselves and performing them themselves, then we will have reached full transhumanist. Or I was imagining like maybe your body is hooked up with servos in a special suit, and you can just download like Jimi Hendrix's Purple Rain, and then watch in amazement as you perform it. You know, just like.
Well, that would be dope. I think it's going to be, my prediction is the next thing will be sort of like the way we have personalized playlists through AI on Spotify now. You'll have personalized AI musicians that make your music instantly that you like. And that's just for you.
Mm.
And it'll make it in a millisecond, and it'll just can make infinite stuff for you. And it every day will just sort of be your companion that's like creating the soundtrack to your life. But I do think that just as there's a hunger now for things like the organic movement or yoga, or even the way psychedelics are coming back as a form of therapy, that's a symptom of the other side of the yin yang, where everything's becoming information sickness and more technology and more stuff in our lives. So I think people will be hungry for, especially the kind of roots and rawness that you're bringing, even with Blitzen Trapper, for instance, and seeing stuff live. That business probably won't go away because we're more. There's more of a need for it.
Yeah,
there's more hunger.
I think it's also interesting too that of all of Eric's songs, Furr is probably the one he's most known for, and that's a song that is really about, in at least partially about, man returning to nature in some way, and sort of finding out something about himself by getting away from the city, getting away from civilization, and embracing the like animal side. I guess that's what I take from it. But I think that a lot of people, when it will come up to us during after shows and be like, "Oh man, we were listening to that while we were camping," or
yeah,
"I went for a huge hike and we listened to that a lot," and like people identify it as, in their lives with very specific trips to nature that they make, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you guys have a real rootsy, like grounded, earthy, dirt wire sound. It's awesome. I mean, I think that's something, again, people are hungry for. I know that's what they connect with a lot. And songwriting, it's like old school in a way. It's that kind of stuff still hasn't been changed or replicated. And look, on the upside, yes, there's more and more competition in music out there, but there's also never been more consumption or listening to music on this planet in the history of the planet ever.
Yeah.
And it's only going to grow. And that's actually kind of a celebration of music in itself. Like, it's so pervasive in our lives that we don't even truly recognize what role it actually plays. And it's bigger than it's ever been.
Does it ever get to you? Like, it gets to me sometimes. Like one of my biggest sort of pet peeves in life is the way in which it's pumped into public spaces that you can't really stop from hearing. Like, I really hate it. Like when you go into a restaurant and it's like you're listening to hits from the 80s and early 90s. It's like, that was for almost 35 years ago. Like, why are we still listening? Like, we have all these satellites spinning around the globe, this amazing technology, and we're using it to like still listen to Michael Bolton and Whitney Houston, and like,
right. There's a laziness for sure.
And it's a lot of the airwaves. It's not just a little bit. Like, I'm okay, like, sure, have some of that, but like, why on the classic rock channel do they mostly play the same 4 Led Zeppelin songs for the last 50 years?
Right. And oldies songs are the
Yeah.
same, obviously. I mean, you and I both know that there is a lot of amazing music out there right now. Like amazing.
Like play some B-sides, play some deeper cuts for God's sakes. You've got the technology, the satellite's already up there. Let's listen to the other songs from Led Zeppelin 3. Why do we have to listen to the same freaking songs? I know how Stairway to Heaven goes. I've listened to it 10,000 times. I'm okay.
Yeah, I know. People are a little lazy. It's kind of amazing, and especially when it's easier than ever to discover new music, and it's actually just fed to you. But
Yeah.
it is happening more than it was before. It was like there was such a lockdown with the radio that was it. And now, at least, even for myself as a user of Spotify, like I discover new artists I never ever would have discovered before.
Yeah, it's true.
But I happen to pay attention to it.
I just discovered an old 70s, an older guy who was in his prime in the 70s named, I think, Paul Brady. He's an Irishman. And came across a couple songs of his that just floored me. And I've been listening to them on repeat. And so I'm really excited about, like, it's rare that
Is he still alive?
Yeah, I don't know. I think so. He's in his he's got to be, I would think, he's got to be at least late 60s, early 70s. But
you're going to Ireland, maybe he's there.
He might be. That's true.
Could look him up.
But if you get a chance, listen to the song. He's on YouTube. I found it. It's like him doing it live was the version that I really liked the best.
What's his name?
Paul Brady. And the song that I really took to was called "The Lakes of Pontchartrain."
Got him.
So good.
Cool. It's a cool title.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song.
Oh, people listen to this guy. He's cool. He looks fierce. Wow. All right, I will listen to that. That's awesome.
I think that's his name.
Paul Brady. He looks like he's in his 60s.
Yeah,
he has a song called "The Lakes of Pontchartrain."
Yeah. Back in the day, he's like he looks like a very gentle ginger balladeer. He's got a beautiful voice.
Singer-songwriter. Yep. He's been working for decades. Yeah, he might still be out there, man.
Yeah, maybe he'll come to a show.
Yeah. I think he'd be psyched. You should reach out to him. He probably would be. Well, awesome. Where can folks find you and this new stuff with Deadly or whatever? What do you want to point them to?
We have some shows coming up on. Let's see. We're going to be playing. I should have this stuff written down, shouldn't I? We're going to be in Astoria.
Well, this will probably be out next week.
Yeah, we're going to be in Astoria. First we'll be in Portland playing on May 16th at Strum, which is like a guitar shop and venue. So that's Thursday, May 16th at Strum. And then we'll be at Fort George in Astoria on Sunday, May 19th. I think those are the...
Is that the hotel out there?
No, it's there's a great hotel there though called the Astor Hotel, I think it is.
Yeah, they do little shows and they'll put you up, and yeah, I heard it's great.
Maybe that's a different one. But they're the Astor Hotel is like the giant Gothic hotel that you see. It's a dominating building in the skyline down there. It's big and white.
Yeah.
Pointed. Yeah, it's beautiful. I don't know which hotel puts people up, but we're playing at Fort George, which is like a really nice brewery gastropub.
Cool. That'd be fun. You picked the right time of year.
Yeah, I'm excited. I always love going to Astoria. And it'll be our first time playing at Strum here in town. That'll be cool too.
Well, what's the website?
We're still working on our website.
You have a Bandcamp though, right?
In the meantime, yeah, you can check out the record at deadly.bandcamp.com. And we're also on Instagram. It's like dead_Lee_duo. And we sometimes post about our shows there. For the most part, we do. We're terrible at social media, but we're trying to make some kind of presence. And
Blitzen Trapper, I know you said a couple shows this upcoming, but you guys might be back in the road in 2020 or new recordings, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. I think Yeah, I think we're gonna do maybe a week long run in August. So if people are interested, they should just keep an eye on the listings. We'll be announcing it probably in June or July, if not before.
Cool. Well, if you are in town June 1st, let me know, and maybe I'll see you then. If not, another time. And I'm sure we'll talk again too. And happy to talk more about the Mushroom record anytime.
Yeah, man, and congrats to all the things you got going on. I'm proud of you. It's wonderful to see.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's to you as well. It's always fun to like circle back after lots of years, and someone actually, Sprague came up the other day, super random. I was in New York City playing a show, was out to dinner with my friend. He had a new girlfriend. She's like, "Do you know so-and-so?" I didn't. She's like, "Oh, he's such and such editor at Pitchfork." I'm like, "Cool." She's like, "Where did you grow up?" Blah, blah, blah. She's like, "What high school did you go to?" I'm like, "That's an odd question." I said, "Sprague." He's like, "Oh, he went to Sprague." It's like this guy who, I was like, okay, that's very bizarre. I didn't know who he was. I think he was a little before us, but there's circles within circles out there, Brian.
Yes, something can happen despite going to Sprague.
There's hope. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great talking to you. Let's talk again soon.
Thanks, Brian, for giving us some time. It was really, really fun to get to look back and just connect with someone from so long ago. And it's always fun to see people that you grew up with having so much success and doing what they're doing. And I just love it. I absolutely love it. And I love that like the podcast can be an excuse to get together and connect and let the story continue. If you like this podcast, please give it 5 stars, or even better, write a review down there. If you go to like the available episodes screen, I believe, you just scroll down to the bottom, you should be able to find it. But even better, share it. Put it on social media, or put it in your stories, or Instagram it, or whatever you do as a way of building our community here and building these stories and having them reach more and more people. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to the people out there. So do a brother a solid and give us a review for this complimentary podcast we're giving you here. And you can always just say hi or ask any questions at info@eastforest.org. This song you're hearing in the background is Only Father's Son, and that is a Dead Lee song. We'll put some links down there to Dead Lee in the show notes. And I hope you enjoy this stuff. I'll be kicking it in Maui. I'll be coming back, giving you more conversations, more meditations, more music. But for now, you just keep walking your walk. May the forest be with you. Don't take any shit, folks, but when you do it with grace.
to say when you saw yourself a soldier sitting by the side of the bed? Baby, does it make you feel better to know that the pain is real, but the war is in your head?